Welcome to the most must-see podcast in pro wrestling history. Welcome to Mark's Side of the Ring. Our reviews, our opinions, our predictions, spoiler-free on all things AEW and WWE. I am your main Mark, Miguel Minetti. Alongside are my two co-marks, Nick Fiorentino and Fred DeCourt. What's going on, boys?
What's happening?
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Doing well, doing well. We have a jam-packed show for everybody today, coming hot off the heels of our special episode last week with our buddy Conrad Thompson, who made a nice appearance last night on AEW Dynamite. Well, I'm sure we're going to talk all about that. Got a lot to discuss this week. A lot happened in the pro wrestling world. But before we get there, Nick, why don't you plug away to our viewers at home how they can, of course, find us, listen to all of our shows, and some exciting news that's coming up.
Yep. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. As always, we appreciate everybody tuning in each and every week. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed last week's show with Conrad Thompson, as Miguel mentioned. We got some great shows coming down the line. I don't know if, maybe at the end of the show, if Miguel feels willing, he could spoil some future guests that we've been in talks with and have coming down the line, too. But we have some fun stuff coming down. As Miguel was saying, we are Mark's Side of the Ring. We are on Twitter now for 2 weeks running at Mark's Side of the One. So Mark's Side of the, and then the number one. And you can find us on Twitter where we're all communicating with you guys. You never know who you're going to get, whether it's going to be Miguel, Fred, me. If it's something condescending and probably pro AEW, it might be me. If it's Slobfest over WWE or Paul Levesque, it might be my two other co-hosts. But you can find all of our shows on TruExactRadio.com. We got a ton of shows. So we have Mark's Side of the Ring. We have Sharp Bets and Fantasy Sets. We have the TruExact Show. We have something about crypto. I forget the name off the top of my head. Dummies for Crypto. We have the Random University. A ton of shows that you can all find there. And you can also check out our new merch with our new logo, which hopefully you guys all enjoy. And that's really it, man. So that's all the plug-in I got going on. And we can go back to our regularly scheduled program.
Awesome. Nick, always can count on you for the great plugs for our not only our show, but the TruExact family as well. So I appreciate that. So let's jump on into the biggest news of the week. And before last night, right, and we're taping this on Thursday here for Saturday dropping, we would have said it would be Bobby Lashley becoming the WWE Champion. And we're certainly going to spend a lot of time on that. But I want to kick it off with something that happened on Dynamite last night, right? Paul White, the artist formerly known as Big Show, came on out and did his first live appearance, taped appearance on AEW. And it wasn't him coming out that was the shocker of the night. It was the fact that he plugged that a major Hall of Fame caliber talent will be signing with AEW this upcoming Sunday at their Revolution pay-per-view. So, guys, I want to jump right into this conversation. I know we had a lot of fun offline here talking about it, but let's let our our viewers kind of take a peek at this. Fred, who do you think it's going to be, man?
Well, it could be a multitude of people. There's debate whether, because Big Show or Paul White said Hall of Fame worthy, does that mean then that they're not currently in the WWE Hall of Fame? Does that exclude anybody that already is? If that's the case, then Christian's name has come up, obviously. I hope it's not, because we saw him have a great return at the Royal Rumble. He had that moment with Edge. I really want to see an Edge and Christian return, even if it's just a short run for the tag titles. He needs that Intercontinental title match with Big E that he has been owed for 7 years. So I hope it's not Christian, and I'm a big Christian fan. But I think it could likely be him. Then, it could be RVD has been talked about. But he's working currently on a project with WWE. In fact, that Icon series that they did on Yokozuna, Beth Phoenix one is coming out next week. They're doing one on RVD. So I don't see that happening. My gut tells me it's going to be Kurt Angle. But then we run into the issue of, the context of it being Hall of Fame worthy, what that actually means. But, of course, CM Punk's name comes up, as always. He said no, now that doesn't mean anything. But I don't think it's him. It's not Brock Lesnar. First off, Brock Lesnar's not leaving the country. Canada. And if it is, he's not going to go to AEW because Vince will pay him whatever AEW is willing and more. So, you know, I'm going to go with Kurt Angle, even though I know the Hall of Fame worthy. Kurt Angle is in the Hall of Fame. I'm going with Kurt Angle. I think it makes sense. Ironically, I asked Conrad about that last week on the podcast, and he didn't think that Angle would go to AEW. Now, I don't think he should because we saw what kind of shape Kurt Angle was in towards the end of his WWE run. It wasn't the Kurt Angle that we knew from 2000 to 2010. But money talks. We saw Sting come back. He wasn't even medically qualified by WWE. So never say never.
How about you, Nick? Who do you think?
I think when it first came down, and you heard Tony Khan double down today and basically say it's a major, major person. And
that's right.
To me, I think, and I messaged you guys, ultimately, I think it's going to be a letdown person, whoever that may be, because they're smart, right? So they're in the business of professional wrestling. Their audience, their customer is us. So when you use words like major, major superstar or major, major star, when you use the words of, potential Hall of Famer or Hall of Famer caliber, you're setting our expectations high, really, really high, because that's what wrestling fans do, right? So when you talk major, major star and you talk potential Hall of Famer, that's not Kurt Angle to me. Now, is Kurt Angle on, arguably some Mount Rushmores or certain things like that? Yeah, he would be, but is he a major, major star? For Tony Khan to double down and say what he said, it can only be two people. And to Fred's point, I don't think it's going to be either. And that's Brock Lesnar and that's CM Punk. That's why I think ultimately it's going to be a letdown person. Who knows who it could be? Some people we've seen as far as saying, Big Show said evolution on accident, not revolution. Could it be Batista? I don't think it's Batista. You saw CM Punk say, well, they should just focus on their own talent, which basically is doubling down to what Conrad Thompson said last week about wrestlers like the fool people all the time. He had Jericho taking pictures and then showing up at the Rumble. So I ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't even want to throw a name. I mean, I've gone so obscure as to say, well, Pete Rose has a history with professional wrestling. Pete Rose is somebody who should be in the Hall of Fame, but isn't for, ethical reasons. Could it be Pete Rose? I honestly, truly don't know. Could it be Joey Styles? We've seen his name pop in there. He just tried to trademark his name. Why? So who knows ultimately who it could be? I mean, could it be somebody like Kurt Angle short? But I think anything short of CM Punk and Brock Lesnar, it's going to be a major disappointment, and they only have themselves to blame for hyping it the way that it has been hyped up.
Another name they threw out there was John Cena, which I think is the most absurd of the three. But I want you to weigh in on that. I mean, why are people...
There's no chance.
Yeah, I mean, why are people on social media even thinking that John Cena, A, would ever defect to AEW, and B, that Vince would not match, if not double, whatever offer that Khan put over to him?
So it goes back to what, and of course we'll tie this into sports-related analogies, obviously my other show, Sharp Bets and Fantasy Sets. But, when Steve Cohen, who just bought the Mets, had a press conference, he compared, they asked him, what was your business model? What do you want to do? He compared himself to the Dodgers, who are the highest payroll by far. I mean, they just signed Trevor Bauer for more money than the entire Pittsburgh Pirates payroll. My point in all this is that he compared himself to the Dodgers, and that gave Mets fans enormous expectations. They got to get Springer. They got to get Bauer. They got to get this guy. They got to get that guy. And ultimately, we're let down when they didn't get anybody. I mean, they traded, but they didn't get anybody. It's not about that. The comparison is that when you say major, major star, it rules out anybody but major, major stars. And when you're thinking major, major stars, you're thinking The Rock. You're thinking John Cena. You're thinking Brock Lesnar. You're thinking CM Punk. You're thinking the biggest of the biggest. Triple H would never be, but you get my point. Biggest of biggest stars. It's going to be a letdown ultimately because it's not going to be any of those major, major stars. And I think when it's all said and done, the person's going to come out and everybody's going to be like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But they're going to be let down.
So Fred, I'll ask you, do you think it's a smart, at least PR move by Khan to double down just to get more eyes on the pay-per-view?
Oh, of course, because I honestly had no interest in this pay-per-view going into it. Now I am intrigued to see who it's going to be. Like, good, bad, or indifferent. I want to know who the person.
Let me cut you off because you're the typical person I would ask this to. Is it intriguing enough that you're going to watch Revolution?
I've contemplated it. In fact, I was going to text you to see, because I know you're ordering it, to see about, joining in. I'm thinking about it. I was curious about the barbed wire matches because I wanted to see what they do. Kenny Omega I can care less about, but I am a fan of Dean Ambrose. So, but I wouldn't pay to watch that. But now I do want to know who this guy is going to be, whether it's Brock Lesnar or whether it's Leo Rush. I don't care. I want to know who it's going to be. So
Did you just say you don't care about Kenny Omega? Please, all the AEW marks that watch our show, all the WWE haters that watch our show, please send your hate tweets to.
No, I really don't. And the thing about it is until you've had a run in WWE, I really don't even consider you at a certain level, including Sting. I always liked Sting, and I thought he was great, but until he had his WWE run, I put him in a different category. I judge you if you haven't had a WWE run.
That is a hot take if I've ever heard.
It's like saying if you're a basketball player and you haven't played in the NBA, how great are you? You could be the best in baseball, best in AAA, but until you've been in the MLB, I mean, what class are you really in? So I think, that's a fair statement on my part. Until you have been to the major leagues, you could be a fucking amazing college football player. Amazing. But if you don't play in the NFL for at least a season, I don't even care what your name is.
Listen, Fred's got every right to feel that way. So, but it sounds like Khan has done his job, right?
But no, in their fairness, whether it's a letdown or it's not, it's a smart move, and I'll give them all that credit in the world.
Is it a smart move,
think,
though? Is it a smart move in 2021? Here's the reason. Hold on one second. Here's the reason why.
Keep it a secret.
Here's the reason why I don't think it's a smart move, because I don't think they're getting any extra views because the Big Show came out and said a major star for a signing. There's a ton of matches that are going to pique your interest. I think to set the fans up, and it's not going to be one of the 5 guys that we mentioned. So you're setting the fans up to be disappointed. And in 2021, when people bitch about everything, I don't know, I love Bray Wyatt. Am I supposed to hate Bray? I'm looking at Twitter. I'm like, wait, we hate Bray Wyatt now? I thought we loved Bray Wyatt. I can't keep up. The fans bitch and complain all the time.
Of course.
But I think it's a dumb move to set yourself up. If you were going to say, we're bringing somebody in, you're going to want to catch it, you're going to want to check it out, tune in, here we go.
But Nick, here's why I think this is going to be
cool.
Is going to be a big name, because they are doing that in the ladder match. I didn't even know that they were having this ladder match, but apparently there's a 6-man ladder match and there's an empty spot.
Yep.
And he said that there will be a pretty fun name that'll be in that ladder match, apparently, Tony Khan said. So there you go. So the ladder match could have somebody that we're now expecting to be the big name, right? It'll be a letdown. No, I think the letdown will be in the ladder match. And I hate to admit it, I think they are going to have a big name. I don't know who it's going to be, because I don't think it's any of the people we're talking about, but it has to be, because it has to be a big name. I can't see it not being.
So Miguel.
Yeah.
Miguel, I'll ask you a question, and Fred, you could jump in too. So we saw Edge come back 2 years ago with the Rumble, and it was great. It was one of an incredibly loud pop, not just on TV, but anywhere you watched it, your friends, if you were sitting with a bunch of friends watching the Rumble, it was crazy. Then you fast forward to this year, And he comes out a week before the Rumble and was like, I'm entering into the Rumble. And we debated here on the show, whether it be on texting or whether it be on the show. I don't remember at this point. We debated whether it was smart to announce a big return ahead of time. If it is a guy, let's just say we're playing, hypotheticals, not devil's advocate. Let's say it's Brock Lesnar. Wouldn't it be more impressive for him to just show up? Now you're saying, well, it's going to be a major star. So now you can only go down from major star to me. It would have been cooler for them to just bring him out. Like if Brock Lesnar just came out, that is a jaw-dropping moment. Yeah. If they say a major star and Brock Lesnar comes out, yeah, it's still a jaw-dropping moment, but it doesn't have the same effect as if Brock Lesnar just comes out and F5 somebody. So do you guys think it's better to kind of set the fans up, or do you think it's better to just be completely 100% surprised?
I mean, so my take on this is I think you're both kind of in the middle there with the points. You both have valid points in what you're saying. I truly think it's going to be a letdown, but that Khan is a smart businessman because he's getting more eyes on this pay-per-view, right? And case in point, Fred right here, Fred DeCourt, had no interest in watching Revolution, was not going to watch it, was not going to order it, right? He's gone on record here, right? And I'm not putting you on the spot here, Fred.
No, it's straight facts.
He doesn't watch Dynamite, right? Almost ever. But today, with Fred, were you not searching for Tony Khan's comments on Twitter? Were you not invested in AEW?
Oh, yeah, I kept checking Twitter periodically throughout the day to see if there was any update on who this guy was going to be.
Right. So my point is this:
it was almost like I was following WWE stuff.
Yeah, of course. So how many Fred DeCourts are out there? Same.
But to be fair to Fred, the only money Fred was going to invest on finding out who it was the gas money it would take to drive to your house and watch it. He just said he's not buying it. He's going to go to your house and watch it. So it's like,
but I'm actually I never thought it would come to this, but I'm defending AEW against Nick. Not, I think it was a smart move on their call. Even if it's a letdown, you got me to the dance.
That's what I think it is. I think it is a letdown. I mean, I think it'll be somebody cool. They're just, to Nick's point, they backed themselves in a corner. There's just a shot.
And I agree with that point. That's why I do feel like it has to be somebody big because they went out of their way to say that.
Well, it's the TNA.
If it wasn't, they I don't think they would have. Say that again?
It's the TNA effect, right? Like how many times has the TNA over the last decade promised somebody big and it never really was, right?
Yeah.
So this is AEW's first big promise, right? Where Tony Khan doubled down this morning on an interview or on Twitter, whatever it was, and said, no, it's actually a Hall of Fame caliber talent, right?
I mean,
so you get one opportunity to make this kind of mistake, which I believe he's going to make this mistake, but he's going to also at the same time accomplish what he's looking to accomplish, which is getting people to buy this damn pay-per-view and then be impressed by the in-ring caliber of the talent that they have.
And don't forget, we've had a lot of surprises already in AEW. Sting was a surprise. Matt Hardy was a surprise. Luke Harper, may he rest in peace, was a surprise. Jon Moxley was a surprise. So we've had a lot. Even Jericho, you can consider a surprise at the press conference. It was not in the arena, but it was, whatever. So all their major gets have been surprises, except Big Show, and now whoever this person is going to be. Everything else has been out of nowhere. So, I think maybe they feel like they've gone, to the well too many times as far as like big surprises. If you keep doing big surprise, it's not as surprising anymore. So maybe they figure let's announce and get eyeballs on the pay-per-view and go from there. But, it'll be interesting next week to see who it is and how we feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. Nick,
I'll throw one more thing out there. I think we're all assuming, not to cut you off, Miguel, but I think we're all assuming like we've rattled off multiple superstars, but we've only rattled off male superstars. I mean, who's to say it's not Lita? Or, Lita wasn't in the Rumble.
Didn't he say he?
Did he say he? To be fair, I don't know. I just saw it was a Hall of Fame caliber. Did he say Hall of Fame caliber guy?
Did he say he or did he say they will make their appearance?
See, I don't know. I that's what I'm saying. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm just saying, if Trish Stratus comes out, is that a major star?
Yeah.
I mean, she's in the Hall of Fame, so is Lita. But
Again,
I'm just saying, I think we all. What if it's Ronda Rousey? Like, we don't know who it is. I mean, it could literally be anybody.
I think Ronda Rousey is on that caliber where if it's Lesnar, Punk, I'm going to say Cena, even though I'll never be him. Lesnar, Punk, Cena, Ronda are probably the four names I can think of that me personally, and I'm sure a majority of our listeners and wrestling fans out there would literally jump out of their seats and say, holy shit, AEW has just put WWE on notice, right?
Yep. I mean, I felt that way even with Big Show because I just, we talked about it last week, but that he was a lifer, for forever, even when his in-ring career was officially done, he'd be there, but, he wasn't happy with the offer WWE was giving him. And we, he's still young. He was still, a viable name and he had a chance to make a better amount of money than WWE was offering, so he took it. So, these names that we say, oh no, it can never be him, and trust me, I'm one of those guys that feels that way. I say, like, I'll use John Cena as a prime example. He's like the prime example of somebody that I would. It will never be John Cena, never. And I do feel that way, but then you see things like Big Show, and you're like, you know what? Never say never truly is, very true.
So I think
how disappointed. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, how disappointed would you be if he has like a JR 1996 gimmick and he brings out like fake John Cena and fake
Oh my God,
Rock or something? How bad it would be. A funny add-in.
That would be great. No. But I think there's two cool points that I want to make. The first one is, did you guys see, one of you, I think it was Fred, mentioned Batista, or maybe it was Nick. Did you guys see Batista's tweet just a few minutes ago, or maybe it was a couple hours ago at this point? Somebody basically tweeted him, a fan tweeted him and said, hey, Big Show or Paul White said evolution instead of revolution. Was that on purpose? And then Batista said they're going to have to come up with another word that's used specifically for professional wrestlers who actually mean it when they say they're retired. Currently, the word retired has zero credibility by professional wrestling standards. So is that Batista tricking the fans, or is he basically confirming?
He's done. My man's in Hollywood. The wrestling business is behind him. He had a retirement against Triple H. It was his dream match. He actually was able to do it. He went out. He had his swan song. And don't forget, he's getting inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame.
Good point.
I would 100% be shocked. Like, nobody would shock me more, honestly, than Batista. Just because, well, The Rock, I think The Rock would too, but just
if it's The Rock, I will kill myself. And I'll do it live. I'll do it live on
next week on Mark's.
I'll do it live on the podcast if it's The Rock.
It's not The Rock. It's not Batista.
I thought Fred was going to say if it's The Rock, he's no longer watching WWE. I really thought that was coming. I said, you heard it here, folks. But,
oh, no. No, I mean, but I just want to make a point and the reality of it. People are making a big deal about who it's going to be. And yes, it's fun. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm sure it'll be a big name. And I'm sure it'll be cool. And it'll be good for AEW. But it's not going to, be this guttural shot to the wrestling world. When Hulk Hogan, the biggest star in wrestling history, went to TNA, it was a big deal, but it meant nothing in the end. Hell, when he went to WCW, and he was even hotter then than he was when he went to TNA, obviously, because he was a more active wrestler, it was a huge deal. But in the end, 83 weeks, Nitro beat Raw in the ratings. But in the end, it meant nothing.
Oh, but they had a parade down Disney World for Hulk Hogan signing at WCW.
But what I'm saying is long term. I'm saying, right.
In the end, WWE won. I agree, but at the time, it was really. I mean, it was a Hulk Hogan. It was a major move. And honestly,
no, and no doubt, and same with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. That was, you could even say that was a bigger deal because they were fresh off of WWE television. At
so
that
basically, what you're saying is it could be a big deal, but it's not going to be a huge deal because they're never going to beat WWE anyway. So fuck it.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Well, okay, so here's my final.
And in 10 years, we'll be on this podcast talking about that time that so-and-so showed up on AEW, and we can watch it now on the WWE Network on Peacock. It's a beautiful thing.
God willing, we'll be here 10 years from now doing this podcast.
My final point was, right, and we'll move on topics, but you kind of segued right into it. Would this be big if John Cena, not that it would ever happen, but fantasy booking, if John Cena showed up on Sunday, would it be bigger than Hulk Hogan going to WCW?
100%. Yep.
It depends how you look at it. So at the time,
but what's he doing? You know what I mean? Like, what's he doing? If
right.
John Cena's going on there to be an active guy, like when Hulk Hogan went to WCW, he was an active wrestler. He was older. WWE wanted the youth movement, but he was an active wrestler. He wrestled. He won a title. He joined the NWO. One of his, you can argue the greatest Hulk Hogan storyline happened in WCW. You can argue that. So is John Cena going to go back to being an active wrestler? No. Yeah. So maybe to Fred's point, I think name-wise it might be as big, but I think that's the point Fred is going to make is that, it's not going to be as big. Unless he's an active wrestler, how can it be bigger?
And why would John Cena leave the WWE part-time schedule to work full-time in AEW? I mean, that just makes no sense. No, but he's not going to make more money in AEW wrestling than he would in Hollywood. He's got, it's Cena's, again, I brought up the point, never say never, and I do believe that, but Cena just makes no sense.
Remember, though, the Khans are billionaires, man.
They won't be
playing money.
No, so was Dixie Carter.
True.
So, and they had Spike TV paying half those guys. Spike TV paid Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff when they came in. TNA didn't, but besides the point is, it'll be a big deal. Twitter will go ablaze. It'll be cool. And then by next week, he'll just be another guy on the roster.
For 1 week, though, for all of our fans out there, for 1 week, Fred DeCourt will be invested in AEW programming.
Right. So, and they got the job done. When Moxley showed up on their first pay-per-view last year, it was actually your wedding.
That's right.
When it happened, I saw it. I was like, holy shit, what? But I don't think I've seen one John Moxley match since he's been in AEW. But that moment, I was like, holy shit, this is fucking crazy. Especially because WWE did that whole farewell for him and the whole thing, and we were only a month removed from him leaving WWE. So it was just crazy. And you hadn't seen that in years. And it felt like an old school WWE, WCW thing before the whole 90-day no-compete clause. But because Ambrose let his contract ride out, he didn't have a no-compete. So anyway, the point being, though, that I do believe it'll be a big name. I do believe we'll be somewhat surprised. And I do believe that in a month from now, it won't mean anything. So.
All right, well, let's move on to our next topic. And like I mentioned at the top of the show here, normally this would probably be the first thing we talked about. But other big news that happened this past week is that Bobby Lashley defeated The Miz to become the new WWE Champion less than 2 weeks after The Miz won the WWE Championship at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. So I know, no surprise, we had talked about, I think it was last week, and I know offline we talked about Lashley becoming WWE Champion and Miz unfortunately become a transition champion. But Nick, when you first saw this, were you kind of surprised that Lashley won the WWE title, or did you expect this full throttle?
It looked like it was heading that way. I mean, we talked about it last week with Conrad, which you could check back in the archives. I think we all were aligned that it was going to be Bobby Lashley against what we thought would be, potentially Brock Lesnar in a collision course match. But I am happy for Bobby Lashley. I've always felt like Bobby Lashley had the look We even tweeted, or I tweeted under our handle, one of the most believable champions they've had since Brock Lesnar. And before that, I don't know who you would be, John Cena, I guess, but the guy looks like he's a legitimate threat. You know what I mean? He's not one of these like fake guys. He's an MMA guy, you know, not as successful in storied MMA career as Brock Lesnar had, being a champion. But you look at Bobby Lashley, you know exactly what Bobby Lashley is and what he does. He beats people up for a living. If I take a picture of John Moxley and I put him in front of you and say, you know, what's this guy do for a living? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to John Moxley, but I think you think maybe he is a sanitation worker. I mean, I don't necessarily know what you think John Moxley does. And, you know, Conrad ripped him last week about, well, he's 6'2", he's bigger than Shawn Michaels, he's bigger than Bret Hart. Well, you know, there's believable guys who look like they're fighters. He is a professional ass kicker. So I think it's great. I'm super happy for Bobby Lashley, a guy who in the last year was being managed by Lito Rush. And what the hell was that? And, you know, the Lana love angle, what the hell was that? And, you know, now you fast forward, they were able to build Bobby Lashley up to be a legitimate ass kicker. So I'm happy for him. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. I hope it goes to him and Brock Lesnar. I think that'd be a money feud. You know, two monster trucks going at it. I mean, I think it would just be phenomenal.
So Conrad said two things, and honestly, I can't remember if they were while we were filming or afterwards, but he believed that the match was going to happen at Fastlane and that Lashley was going to win there, right? Which obviously happened on Raw, which was surprising. And number two, he talked about how important Fastlane was and will be because it's the first pay-per-view on Peacock. So, Fred, I want to ask you this two-part question. Did you expect it to happen on Raw? Because it did. And number two, do you feel that because of what Conrad said, and again, I don't remember if this was on air for our fans here, but he mentioned that Fastlane was going to be a massive pay-per-view because it was the debut pay-per-view, the debut show on Peacock. Do you think we're going to see Brock Lesnar come out at Fastlane?
So, you know, when the match was first announced, I thought, okay, this is going to happen on Raw. They're going to do it. They're going to put the title on Lashley. And then at the way they built it, which I thought was very well done. They made you wait till 9. Then they made you wait till 10. I thought it was very well done. There was a great thread throughout the show, which we don't always get. It felt like Raw from years past. I was intrigued throughout the night, and that's hard to do, especially on a 3-hour show. And then you kept thinking, oh, okay, yeah, see, they're not going to, here it, and then it happens, and he fucking gets it. So I think they made the right move. And in this era, with everything going on, we've talked about on the podcast before about doing different things, taking chances, going different routes than they would have, because they have the capability now to do, you know, what they want, really, without the fans in attendance. I think it was a smart move. I mean, really, when you think about it, what's the difference between Raw and Fastlane now? You know, besides the whole Peacock situation, there's no fans. There's no, you know, it is what it is. Just another show. Then that does bring me to the point, though, like you mentioned about Peacock. You know, Fastlane being an important show because it's the first one on Peacock, which it's not exclusively on Peacock. It'll still be on the network. WrestleMania will be the first Peacock exclusive pay-per-view or special, whatever you want to call it. Not really pay-per-view anymore. I don't know if we'll see Brock Lesnar at Fastlane. That depends if we see Brock Lesnar Sunday at Revolution. So I don't think so. And I do think we will get Bobby Lashley, or not I think, we will get Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar at a future time. I don't think it's this year, and there's two reasons why. One, we've talked about Lesnar before and the whole COVID situation, him getting to Canada, out of Canada, all the, you know, ins and outs of that. Not to say it can't happen, but it's not, you know, the easiest thing to do right now. And B, Lashley has said on a couple of interviews the last couple of weeks that he's done, they bring up him and Brock, and that is something that he still wants because they talk about how he's brought that up before. But he keeps plugging that the person he wants now is Drew. He keeps saying that. So I think he's purposely doing that to get the word out there because it's going to be obviously Drew and Bobby at WrestleMania. So he's trying to put interest in that and get get away from the talk about him and Brock. Not to say it won't happen because I think will, but to make the focus on him and Drew. So he's been saying that the person he wants is Drew because Drew's been the guy for the last year. He wants him. So I think we won't see Brock at Fastlane, and it will be Drew and Bobby at WrestleMania for the title.
So let me ask you something, Fred, and then I'll kick it back over to Nick. But and Nick, you're kind of doing exactly what my point is, and I wanted to ask you, Fred, are you excited to see a match that we saw only 7-8 months ago? Roles reversed. Drew McIntyre, WWE Champion, took on Bobby Lashley at, what was it? It was Payback or?
Well, see, that's the thing. We don't even remember. It was on some random pay-per-view from last summer in the Performance Center. So that right there, yes, I do want to see it. It's, first off, different way around, which changes the entire dichotomy of the match with a heel champion face challenger, right? That changes everything. So, yeah, I want to see it. And I wanted to see more of them last year, but then they moved on to Drew and Orton. I thought Lashley, because that's when Lashley was really starting to, he was getting some momentum. The Hurt Business had just started a month or two prior. He was starting to, get some fire behind him, and they did the one match, and it was great. And I thought, oh man, there was more meat on the bone there to do. It got stopped. But now we pick it up and we put it on the grandest stage of them all in front of what we think will be 30,000 fans. It's a whole different ballgame. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that are against rematches at a WrestleMania, and let alone the fact that they've only had one match, and it was 8 months ago in the Performance Center, and nobody even remembers what pay-per-view it was on. So yeah, I think it's a totally different ballgame. I'm 100% on board. I do want Bobby and Brock. So I'm not saying I don't want that, and I'd be happy to have it this year. But I think it makes more sense to do Bobby and Drew this year and save Bobby and Brock for a WrestleMania that's full on 100,000, 70,000 to 100,000 fans in attendance, and do it there, not now. So, and it makes sense. Storyline, Drew should be in the title picture. He just lost it. He should go to WrestleMania and fight for the title.
So Nick, let me ask you, right? If the goal is, and we don't know what the goal is, but let's pretend we know the goal, and the goal is to get the title back on to Drew McIntyre, right? And let's say the fans, or let's say the WWE brass are saying, well, we want Drew to have his moment in front of some fans, which if he does win, I'm assuming that's exactly the reason for it. But why take this path? And Nick, I'll ask you this question. Do you think this path that they took to have Miz take it off of Drew, to have Bobby take it off of Miz, just to have McIntyre take it off of Bobby makes any type of sense at all?
So when Fred was talking, I actually thought to myself, what would scare the shit out of me is if, from a viewership standpoint, is if they built Bobby Lashley to look like this monster, unstoppable MMA ass kicker because they can't get Brock Lesnar for the rematch for him and Drew because of COVID, because of Canada, because maybe he's showing up on AEW this weekend.
His wife is from Jacksonville.
They build up Bobby Lashley to be like, there you go, Rena. They build up Bobby Lashley to be like Brock Lesnar light, and they give Drew McIntyre the win against Brock Lesnar light at WrestleMania, where he would take over the title, which would be the first time he ever held the title with fans in attendance. His entire reign was without fans.
Yeah.
I think if he were to win the title in front of fans, it would be a colossal mistake because of the fact that I think the fans, and again, I'm as confused as the next person as to who we're rooting for, who we're not. I don't think Drew McIntyre, if COVID didn't exist, would have been in the title picture for as long as he was in it. but I also don't think he would be a fan favorite at this point. I think the fans would, by this point, turn on him due to either storylines not
Like
being
they always
great.
do.
I mean, he fought Randy Orton, who I think, yeah, maybe, but I think, Randy Orton's kind of a theoretical boring wrestler. We could debate that. Then he fights Goldberg, and we know what some fans think about that. I just don't think they really set him up for. He never got like a bunch of matches with Brock, probably because of COVID. So I just think his time has passed. It's time to move on. And everything that they've done so far to build up Bobby Lashley just doesn't look like Bobby Lashley's going to be the transitional champion. It looks like The Miz was a transitional champion to get the title from Drew to Bobby so that Bobby can have his moment in the sun. And I don't know. I mean, I really don't want to see Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. I know it would be the biggest match on the card, but it would still be a marquee title match. And to me, I think that time has passed.
I think if anything, they can get away with it this year because WrestleMania is 2 nights, and obviously the true main event is Roman versus Edge, right? Which we found out is official now, right? Or, I'm sorry, it could be Daniel Bryan if he beats Jey Uso this Friday in a steel cage match to get the number 1 contendership to face Roman Reigns at Fastlane. We all know, though, that Roman Reigns is walking into WrestleMania as Universal Champion. So I'm going to go ahead and say safely Roman versus Edge is the true main event. And go ahead, Nick. Yeah.
I agree 100%, but I wanted to make one point too. Did you get the sense that, and I didn't feel this way, I actually was excited for WrestleMania like I think you guys are. I think you guys might be potentially going, but I was looking forward to the first WrestleMania with any fans at all. I mean, I think it's going to be an exciting show, but I almost got the sense from Conrad, who did say on our show, which again, you can listen to back in the archives, that WWE, and of course he doesn't talk to Bruce, he mentioned that multiple times, it's his own opinion, but I know he has at least a sense. It almost felt like they punted on last year's WrestleMania and they're punting on this year's WrestleMania, which to me I find interesting. Would they put that match as like, a title match on a WrestleMania that they're planning on punting? I mean, I don't know. I did get the idea talking when Conrad was on the show that they're punting on this year's WrestleMania, and I think that's a mistake.
I don't think they're punting, though. I think they're definitely gearing up for it to be a really solid card, right? But
do you get what I mean by the way Conrad was talking last week? That he was like, "Oh, who cares about this WrestleMania? Who cares about last year's WrestleMania?"
Well, I think this is going to be more of an experimental show than anything, right? Besides last year,
they're going to sit like they're not going to have The Rock and Roman Reigns. Even if Rock was available, they're not going to do that this year.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of cool surprises this year for WrestleMania.
But Edge and Roman is a WrestleMania main event no matter how many fans are in the building. That is,
I agree.
100%.
I agree.
But I think the point of McIntyre, even if it is McIntyre versus Lashley, regardless of how we feel about it, I think if I'm looking at it through a WWE lens, they can get away with this match because WrestleMania is going to be 2 nights, right, for COVID restriction reasons. Roman versus Edge is clearly the main event of one of the nights, probably night 2, which makes sense. And they can get away with Bianca Belair versus Sasha as the true main event of night 1. So you can just pluck that match, Drew versus Bobby Lashley, somewhere in night 1 or night 2, whether it's the first match or middle of the card of either night.
See, I take offense to they can get away with. I don't think we're getting away with anything. I think, well, Sasha and Bianca, they deserve to be a main event of one of the nights.
100%. Yeah, they do.
I mean, she won the Rumble. Okay, they have 2 nights. They can afford to have the women main one night and the men the other. I think that's a great thing to do. There's a lot of intrigue behind that. People have been clamoring for Sasha and Bianca. They've been ever since she won the Rumble, especially. It has to be Sasha. Sasha Bianca. It was talked about when Bianca went to SmackDown in the fall, and then it really fired up when she won the Rumble. So but even Drew and Lashley. It's not a bad match. It's a great match. I understand. If you had to pick, everybody would pick Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar for the title, or they would pick Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar for the title. So basically what we're saying here is we want Brock Lesnar in the title match, regardless of who it is. We don't probably get that this year, and that's fine. So I don't see any problem in Drew and Bobby Lashley. I think if Brock's not in the picture, it should be Drew and Bobby together. I mean, I wasn't against Drew and Sheamus. They had a hell of a match on Raw, and it got a lot of praise backstage. I love the finish of that match. Him going for the bro kick right into the Claymore. I mean, it was great stuff.
It was a great match. I agree.
Yeah.
But
But
my
so
point is, Fred, is that out of the 3 matches, right, we're going to pretend that McIntyre versus Lashley is confirmed, even though it's not.
right.
3 matches that are confirmed, right, in this hypothetical situation. You know your interest is Roman Edge first, Sasha Bianca Belair second, and Bobby Lashley versus McIntyre third, right? And because of that order, you can, to my point, get away with plucking Bobby Lashley versus McIntyre somewhere in the middle of night 1 or in the middle of night 2 or in the beginning of night 1 or in the beginning of night 2.
Yeah, I mean, I see that's what I think Sasha and Bianca deserve to go last on one of the nights. But I also think that Drew and Lashley deserve to go last on one of the nights.
So you're more excited to see Lashley versus McIntyre than you are Sasha and Belair?
I mean, it's for the WWE Championship. The only thing I could tell you 100% is Roman and Edge. And I think it should be Sunday, because to me, I'm still viewing Sunday as the main event of wrestling.
Yeah, agreed. I think there's no question. That should be the last match we see of both nights, right?
Right.
But, Nick, let me ask you to get you involved in this too. Are you more excited for Sasha and Belair than you would be for Lashley and McIntyre?
I would be, but I think that there are other matches that Bobby Lashley could have that would pique my interest, more than Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, which I think is going to be a very entertaining match. I just think, and to Fred's point, Edge and Roman Reigns are going to be the true main event. But I find it hard to believe that Edge is going to win the title, and they're going to take it off Roman Reigns. So do you have, if we're fantasy booking and we all think Drew McIntyre is fighting Bobby Lashley, and I think if we take a straw poll, I mean, who here thinks Drew McIntyre is beating Bobby Lashley if that's where they go? Am I the only one? You guys think Bobby Lashley is going to win?
Well, no. So here's the thing. I really thought going into this that what we were getting to was Drew was going to, whether he went in as champion or went in as challenger, he was going to WrestleMania to win and to hold up the championship at the end, right? To kind of remake last year. But now I can't 100% say that, because I don't see Lashley losing. Like you said, that Nick, you said before that Lashley, you don't feel Lashley should lose it right now. And I agree. I don't think Lashley should lose it, but I also don't think Drew should lose. So now you kind of booked yourself into a corner here.
I agree. My point in it, and I agree with what you're saying. I don't think, so you go night 1 and the main event is, Bobby and Drew, or if it's not the main event, you're having a title change. Theoretically, if Drew takes the title back, either in the middle of day 1 or at the end of day 1, all to have day 2 be the champion retain. I mean, I think WWE likes that image of a new champion, being the last thing you see at WrestleMania. I think we don't have to go through all the WrestleManias, but I think more often than not, the title changes hands if it's the main event. So I do think that, the title's probably going to change hands in the main event. And if they're going to do that, then something else might want to be the main event of one of the nights.
But don't forget, there have been WrestleManias that hasn't happened.
Oh, there have been.
A lot,
But,
Cena won 2 in a row. He retained the title. Miz, which we talked about last week, retaining the title at 27. We never thought that would happen. So a lot of champions have retained their title at WrestleMania. So it's not out of the question.
They're on 37 WrestleManias. I mean, we have seen it all. I mean, but I'm just saying, more often than not, they want a lasting impression. Let's call it that.
I mean, the first time that it happened that really broke the mold was when Triple H retained in 2000. Everybody expected The Rock to win that. He won it the month later at Backlash, but Triple H won that Fatal 4-Way, which was, I remember at the time, was crazy. Because the formula always was a new champion, especially a babyface champion. at WrestleMania. The heel never left WrestleMania, let alone as champion. So, but being that it is 2 nights, and that's the other thing about Edge and Roman that I love. I don't see Roman losing, but I don't see Edge losing either. Right? So again, and I love that. Even Sasha Bianca, yeah, you could say, oh, well, Bianca's going to win. She won the Rumble. But not necessarily. You could also say, well, Sasha's been on a roll. She's the GOAT of the women's division. She's going to retain at WrestleMania. There's so far, those 2 matches, and if it is Drew and Lashley, I don't think you could 100% call any of them. And we haven't had that at a lot of WrestleManias in the past few years where we really didn't know who the hell was going to win.
I think those are all fair points. It's exciting to see what's coming down the pike, though, for WrestleMania, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of excitement in the air. For
sure. And speaking of excitement in the air, I want to talk about our final topic tonight before we conclude the show, and that's obviously, and I got to give WWE credit for this. They've done a hell of a job with the whole Fiend Randy Orton situation, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the Fiend was burned alive in December, and I thought for sure that son of a bitch was showing up before the Royal Rumble, to say the least, right?
Yeah.
Nevertheless,
my goal was the Rumble.
Exactly.
At least wait till the Rumble.
They've carried this storyline for almost 3 solid months, just
Beautiful.
between Alexa Bliss and Randy Orton. So obviously, we're gearing towards a return of the Fiend, right? At probably WrestleMania or his first match at WrestleMania. But
I think they're going to save him at this point now. Not to cut you off, Miguel, I'm sorry, but I think they're going to save him.
They probably will.
At this point, you might as well.
They'll probably save him to actual WrestleMania. But at this point, right, the Fiend coming back, and Nick, I'll kind of kick the question off to you first. Are we excited to see the Fiend come back? And if so, are you expecting a different look or a different feel of some sort to the Fiend? Or would you be just as cool if the Fiend, as we know him, returns as is?
I think it is going to be something different. I mean, Bray likes to reinvent himself on numerous occasions. He's done so already. I would give the storyline, I'd give the Bray Wyatt character, I really enjoy. So I give him like a B plus and A minus. I mean, I think he's really entertaining. Do I think that this feud has been so great? And I kind of alluded to it last week with Conrad. I mean, the throwing up the black ooze, I get it. He suspends disbelief. So did the Undertaker. But like the Undertaker didn't go up to somebody and shoot him with a gun and then like have him turn around and come back 3 months later. Like Randy Orton committed murder on a pay-per-view. And like it just gets passed off as like it's WWE. Sometimes things are so far-fetched and so, I don't want to use the word stupid, but so like just like what, like they didn't have to do that. You could have gotten rid of them in a million different ways. And I think the storyline a little bit, and I see Fred salivating.
I got a counterpoint.
I know, to defend this storyline, and honestly, I don't hate it. I just there's been some things in the storyline that have kind of been like, okay, I mean, I get it, but I don't even think an 8-year-old is believing that, you know, he really set the Fiend on fire. I mean, it clearly looked like a dummy.
Go ahead, Fred.
Go ahead.
2 things. One thing, it is sports entertainment. Not everything's going to be a Dave Meltzer 5-star classic. So there are elements, especially when you have a 3-hour show, of different things throughout the show. This is one element of the show that is different from anything else on the show. So right there, you won me over. Because out of anything on the show, it's the only thing that stands out as different, and I look forward to it every week, whatever bizarre shit they do. This week, you saw Orton seeing himself in the video, and he was doing a maniacal laugh. Yes, it's over the top. Yes, it's hokey. Yes, it's this. Yes, but that's pro wrestling. Other point, you mentioned The Undertaker, who is my favorite wrestler of all time, and part of the reason that I always loved that character were the things that he did. Was him elevating to the skies. Was him not showing up in a casket when you opened it. Was the lights going out and him showing up in the ring and shit like that. That's what made him so cool to me and so different. So I bring up to the Fiend. He was burned alive, yeah. But do you remember one of the most iconic things in Undertaker's career was when Kane set the casket on fire at the Royal Rumble in 1998?
but that's the point. He set a casket on fire, and when they lifted up the casket, the Undertaker wasn't there.
Exactly. So how did Undertaker?
So
Undertaker just miraculously got out of the casket? That's what I'm saying.
Entertainment to your point is a relative term. I understand it's
right. No, and that's it. I'm not saying you should agree with me. No.
I was entertained by watching Shaq wrestle yesterday.
Oh, God.
That doesn't mean he wasn't bad. That doesn't mean
now if that was in WWE, people would have been shitting on it.
Nah, I don't know about that. But listen, so entertainment doesn't necessarily need to be somebody getting set on fire, legit set on fire, and then coming back. Like, and we've seen people set on fire. Do an Inferno match. His whole body didn't need to be set on fire. It was clearly a dummy. To me, it's kind of like it suspends even the most unbelievable of like things. It's just, to me, that was kind of a turnoff to me. And I think if you poll the fans,
far for you.
I think if you poll the fans, there was a moment when people turned and soured on the Fiend. I'm willing to bet, and I don't know this for a fact, that might have been the Fonzie jump the shark moment where they were like, okay, I mean, what the fuck was that? I mean, and that's kind of how I felt. I mean, now the Fiend can come back and be ultra cool. His Firefly Funhouse is fun and entertaining. The vignettes, I think the things he's done with Alexa Bliss have been great. I mean, I don't know why anybody would shit on her for the stuff she's been doing.
She's get a lot of credit for carrying this.
Yeah, she's been great. I 100% agree. But to me, it's just like sometimes WWE does things like the Vince McMahon limo exploding. What, they were literally going to kill him off, and it didn't happen.
I love that.
Because of Chris Benoit. Oh my God, that is like, come on.
Do you know I had people call me that night that I hadn't spoken to in years? Call me and ask me, yo, what the fuck happened? Vince's limo exploded on live TV?
Oh my God.
Those are the people that might have believed in Santa Claus until they were 10. I'm just saying, I don't know who these people were.
Well, there was a lot of people, and I mean, WWE didn't help the fact by putting a whole R.I.P. Vince McMahon on the fucking website.
They may be the people that think that the strippers actually care about them and love them.
They do.
But
that's what she told me.
I think what you have to appreciate the most, Nick, right, in this storyline is WWE's willingness to slow play it, right, to slow build it. Because in true WWE fashion, how many times have they taken a great storyline and fast-tracked the hell out of it, right? I mean, come on.
That is one thing they're notoriously bad at.
Yeah, nothing better than a slow build. And I mentioned it on the show before, whether it be Hogan and Macho, whether it be Triple H and Batista, nothing is better than the slow build.
Yeah,
I mean, that alone, this storyline is. I appreciate them taking the patience and the time to not blow through it. So that alone, I am grateful for.
So before we end this final topic, before we sign off for the night, I want to ask you guys just one little quick question regarding the Fiend. What would make him different? Do you think it would be his hairstyle? Would it be a new mask? I mean, what are you looking for if we are looking for different? New clothes, all of the above, new music? What do you think would be different about him that you're looking for?
It's hard. I think it has to be all of the above. But at the same time, it's like he just reinvented himself 2 years ago to this amazing character. I hate to see that go. But I think that is the whole point of all this.
Nick, would it be a letdown if he just came back as is, or would you be just as excited?
I would be excited, but I would be wondering why they wrote him off for so long by murdering him on live TV in front of, the millions of people that tuned in that night to watch it. I would wonder why they murdered him, which Fred was very entertained by.
I hear you. Well, it's going to be exciting nevertheless, right? And Fiend, at this point, Fred, I agree with you. I think he's going to make his official first appearance at WrestleMania, which, hey, another reason to tune in. So, and it's going to be cool to see whether he comes out on Saturday or if he comes out on Sunday.
It's another big match on the card.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
There's built-in story there, I always love those WrestleMania matches that, like, we got a little hint around the fall.
Yep. Always the
There's
best.
no way. There's no way. Just real fast. There's no way it's a cinematic match, right? We're done with that.
I think we're done with that.
I would hope so.
I hope so.
At this point, I mean, there's going to be 30,000 people there. So, I mean, I don't even think one match should be cinematic.
Because they've been done with that since they went to the Thunderdome. So I think.
I hope so.
But apparently Sting's match is going to be cinematic at Revolution.
We'll have to tune in. We'll have to tune in to find out. So, speaking of tuning in, make sure you all tune in next week to get Fred's reaction for Revolution. And this could be the first ever full show that Fred watches for AEW since inception. So it's definitely one of the reasons to tune on in next week. And guys, before we go for tonight, I want to let everyone in for the number one reason to tune in next week. And that's I'm about to break some fantastic news here. Live next week on the show.
A potential Hall of Famer. No,
A potential Hall of Famer.
Should be. That's another. We should bring that up.
Wait for it. A potential Hall of Famer is joining us. Big time Tim Sikora. No, not Tim Sikora. Tim Sikora, a friend of the show, Sharp Bets and Fantasy Sets. He will be joining us next week. But all jokes aside, ladies and gentlemen, our special guest for next week is none other than Eric Bischoff. That's right. Eazy-E himself, Eric Bischoff, will be appearing on Mark's side of the ring. So I know all three of us and Tim, we're all excited to have Eazy-E on. The man that went 83 weeks toe-to-toe with Vince McMahon himself. So, guys, make sure you tune on in next week. The episode will drop Saturday, March 13th. As always, as Nick mentioned, you can find all of our shows, TruExactRadio.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. That's Mark's side of the one, as Nick mentioned. Also, make sure you give love to True Exact itself on Instagram and Twitter. That's True Exact Radio on both Instagram and Twitter. You can also catch our show on the YouTube channel, True Exact Radio, on iTunes, Spotify, and the podcast app for iPhones, all True Exact Radio. We're out of time for tonight. Gentlemen, this was a great discussion. I look forward to next week's conversation and with Eazy himself.
Pleasure is
Agreed.
Take care, guys.
Yep.